You know, card games seemed to be a lot simpler when I was a kid. Or at the very least, Pokemon seemed a lot simpler. Same thing with Yu-Gi-Oh, considering that there's a good number of Yu-Gi-Oh cards today that I'm like, I have no idea what it does, but I like the art. The dragon looks cool, or the wizard, or the whatever looks cool, and I don't know what the heck is going on in the game at this point in time. Um, Pokemon. And a lot of cards. Um, so, yeah, lots of card games that have happened over the years throughout my childhood, and other anime have done different card games over the years as well. So, that over there. For reference, I also have a Star Wars binder, although I don't honestly think I have any actual Star Wars cards in here, although there being a Star Wars card game would not surprise me in the slightest. I got a bunch of Yu-Gi-Oh cards. Some of these might actually be original print, but I don't know because it's been so freaking long since I've played anything. Ooh. Change of heart. Yeah, there's so many Yu-Gi-Oh cards. Like so many of the cards that came out, like I have the 3 God cards over here. I do have a point with this, I promise. I have God cards, I have ritual cards, I have so many other types of cards, fusion monsters, summoning monsters, you know, whatever the heck pendulum monsters are, whenever the heck those came into being, I don't know. There's a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh cards that I have here. I also have some Magic cards, which have no real relevance to me because I never played Magic. My brother-in-law tried playing Magic at some point in time, and either he got a whole bunch of cards he didn't need or whatever, and he gave them to me, and I kept the pretty ones. I also have Shaman King cards. Does anyone remember Shaman King? I remembered at some point in time I was going to talk about Shaman King. I never did. I may have to do that at some point in time. But this is a Digimon video. Digimon shirt. It talks about Digimon in the title. So I'm going to talk about the different modified Digimon cards that they used in Digimon Tamers. And Digimon cards. So I got Saber Leomon. I got like 2 different versions of Angemon. None of these are the actual modified cards from the game, though, so they do nothing. From the actual TV series. So I'm going to talk about the modified cards. 1 second. I finished the intro. My mom walked in the house with our cousin. Okay. At least it's a good edit point. So this is going to be me going through and talking about a bunch of the different types of modified cards that they use throughout the series of Digimon Tamers. Some of them, obviously, just like with when it comes to Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh and any other card games, that when it gets translated from Japanese into English, particularly with the dub and different things like that they had to explain in the dub, they have alternate names in Japanese and in English, obviously. I'm mostly going to be sticking with the English names just because that's what I'm most familiar with. Although some of them are literally just plug B to A or Y or whatever the heck they are. And that was what their original name was. And then they just shifted into speed or endurance or whatever. And I'm like, that makes more sense, I guess. So overall view, throughout the course of Digimon Tamers, we see pretty much most of the Tamers end up using their modified cards at various points in time. So they all have their Digivice, and then they have their card, and then they're able to swipe the card or however many number of cards through the Digivice, or the D-Arc as it's referred to as in this, or the D-Power, or whatever they want to call it, their version of the Digivice. They're able to use that to then make a modification to their Digimon for a certain amount of time. Generally with Digimon in the Tamers world, if a Digimon wants to get stronger, they have to absorb data from other from other Digimon, from other Pokemon. Yeah, that too. From other Digimon. We see Rika and Renamon trying to do this at the beginning of the series, where Rika just keeps having Renamon fight all these different Digimon that bio-emerge, and Renamon keeps absorbing their data, but she still can't Digivolve. And then Rika, even though she's used multiple, cards with Renamon to help increase Renamon's strength and durability and whatever else, she still doesn't Digivolve. I have a whole separate video where I talk about how Digivolution works in Digimon Tamers, and some of the cards do get mentioned in that one too, like the blue card or the red card. But I will go over those briefly in this video as well, because they are applicable since they are cards. But generally what we see happen throughout the course of the Tamers series is that pretty much most of the kids get their own version of like the card swiping sequence and everything like that, where they have to do like a really cool pose and flip the card and spin and swipe, and I'm just like, it's like the over-the-top mechanics is not necessary, but it's anime, so over-the-top mechanics are applicable, and this will happen. It's like it's a way of eating up time during the episode, obviously, by using the card swiping sequences again and again and again, so that way they're able to, or like they'll triple or double up on them depending on how many Tamers, or if Rika, Takato, and Henry are all using cards at the same time, they'll double or triple up so they can all swipe their cards at the same time and just have like a nice looking 3-panel sequence of it. Same thing with like when the Digimon Digivolve and things like that. It's just like the same thing happens in like Magical Girl anime, where it's like, oh, there's a transformation sequence, or like there's a sequence where like this and this have to merge or something like that. It's the same concept. It's designed to eat up time in the show so that way they can pad it out a little bit more. I mean, I was gonna say One Piece kind of does this, but One Piece and My Hero don't actually do that too much. I mean, like, yeah, they pad out the episodes at times, but not as much. But that's going into a different conversation of filler. Filler, fluff, padding, whatever you want to put it as. But throughout the course of the Digimon Tamer series, all of the different Tamers, most Rika, Takato, Henry, Ryu, Jerry, and Susie all use modify cards at various points in time, and I'm going to go through the list of which ones they all use and roughly what they do. They all each end up having... Takato, Rika, and Henry, we actually kind of see how it starts for them. They all have these different versions of like a card scanner. Rika and Takato have these smaller devices that look like calculators that like Takato swipes the blue card through in the first episode, and that changes into a Digivice. And then when, Rika does the same thing when she kind of makes her deal with Renamon for Renamon to be her Digimon, she swipes the blue card through the card scanner, and that it turns into her Digivice. And then Henry has like one more that's like designed to be plugged into a computer to be used with a Digimon computer game that his father got him, and he swipes the blue card when he's trying to save Terriermon, and that's what ends up happening there, and that turns into Henry's Digivice. So it's a mechanic that allows the cards to be able to be connected to the Digimon, and then they're able to swipe them, and it gets them the power transferred into the Digimon, whatever that power may be, for a duration of time. Temporary increases and things like that. The different types of the cards, there's a bunch of different types. There's Digimon cards, which is where they actually just have like a card of the Digimon, which are mostly what these ones have. The ones that I have here are mostly from like adventures. I don't have any, I think, from like Digimon Tamers or anything like that, just because like I don't think the Digimon card game is all that popular anymore, and most of the stuff that I got here are probably stuff that I found at like garage sales and different stuff like that, where it's just like, oh, you can get a bunch of Digimon cards. Oh, well, I'll take them. I'll look through them and see if there's anything that I like. They're $5 for a giant pack. I'm good. I'll take these. Same thing also applies to me when it comes to like Pokemon cards and Digimon cards at times, and Yu-Gi-Oh cards and whatnot at times. And I'm like, ooh, I have no idea what this does, but it's pretty, or it looks cool. Yeah, that's kind of where my standing applies to all of that. Don't ever try to challenge me to a duel. You will win, and I will have no idea why, because I'm like, I don't know what I did. I played the card. Don't ask me. There's the Digimon cards, which actually just have the Digimon on them. And generally the way that the game is played, that like Kazu and Kenta and Takato played at the beginning of the series, or that we see Rika and Ryu playing it throughout the course of the series when we get flashbacks of them in the tournaments, is that it's just like with Pokemon. You have a card that is like the Digimon that you chose, and then you have like these different modified cards that you can add to it to increase the Digimon's strength or stamina or whatever, and then they battle, just like what you kind of see with like Pokemon card battles and stuff like that. And it's like I don't know if there's like an amount of life points that are involved. I'm assuming they never go into an exact detail of it in the series, and as I said, I never really played it that much when I was growing up. But there's the Digimon cards where you have the Digimon itself. Then there are the option cards, which are different types of support cards and things like that have like additional effects, strength, speed, stamina, different things like that. And then there's the item cards. Well, option cards kind of go into all these other different types. There's item cards, which gives your Pokemon a new item. We see this when it comes to like, oh, let's give Terriermon a shield, or let's give Renamon a claw or something like that. It gives them that. There's equipment items, which kind of does a similar thing. There's plug-in cards, which are the ones that are mainly designed for doing speed and defense and stamina and different things along those lines. Then there are the device cards, which I guess are a little bit harder to use because we see Rio use these at one point in time on oh frick, I just blanked on his Digimon. Cyberdramon, sorry, that Rio uses on Cyberdramon. We see him use those. And then there are different program cards that just do like other various things in regards to affecting how the Digimon is battling. Throughout the course of the series, they don't really ever explain what each card specifically is. Like, this is an option card, this is this is that, this is this is that. Generally, it's just like, oh, this is what happens when you swipe it. It's an item, or it's a power boost or something like that. So there's not too much there. Those are the different types. And then there are, of course, the blue and red cards. Blue and red pills. For Matrix references there. I have no idea if that's a Matrix reference or not, if they did that on purpose. But the blue cards, we all see Henry, Rika, Takato, and them and Rio and whatever, they all end up with blue cards at various points in time. They get them when they each get their Digimon and make their bond. They get them at various points in time when they need to get their Digimon to Digivolve into the next level after the champion level, to get Digivolve into their ultimate level, or mega level, whatever their second level is, to move into that next level. And that's needed there. I think it's also they also end up using them at various points in time to kind of help strengthen their Digimon depending on stuff. And Henry actually observes throughout the course of the series that the reason the card slashing has any effect at all is because the Tamers believe that it will. They're all under the impression that, like, well, they're all used to playing the card game, and like when you swipe the card in order to power up your Digimon or give them a new effect or something like that, by swiping it, you're already, like, that's already ingrained in you from playing the game, that's what you're supposed to do. And the reason that it makes any difference at all is because the Tamers believe that it will work. So it's like, oh, I believe that this, power-up boost will help my Digimon get stronger. Swipe. I believe that this armor will help protect them. Swipe. I believe that giving them this sword will help with, them and defeating this bad Digimon. Swipe. And that's what happens. It is literally like the same way that, like, it's feeding off of the power that, comes from the kids' imagination and stuff like that. It's literally a version of that. And there's a very good version of this when, two things I'm going to point out. In the battle where they're having to fight against the Tiger Dave, when they're having to deal with him, I believe during that time frame at some point in time, that's when Gilmon has to have, or when Growlmon has to have a blue card to Takato. Takato needs the blue card to Digivolve him into War Growlmon. And then later on, Kazu ends up actually making a fake blue card because Takato and Henry have, like, described them what happened for how they got Terriermon and Gilmon and how they both had this blue card involved. So Kazu makes this fake blue card, and then later on within that episode, they end up getting a They end up having to deal with the Digimon, and Takato needs to evolve Gilmon all the way up to War Growlmon again, and Kazu, hands him the blue card and, come on, try it, just try it or whatever. And I was like, hey, guy did pretty good for just a basic description of the card in regards to how he drew it. So he gets points for that. And Takato's able to use it. It turns into an actual blue card. We've seen other cards turn into blue cards as well. Sometimes the blue cards just appear. Sometimes they're a different card metamorphosizing into them. A very good one is this, is that when they're having to deal with Vicaramon, that's the Boar Deva, that, all three of their Digimon are already as, their Talmon and Rapidmon and War Growlmon at this point in time already, so it's they don't have the ability to bio digivolve yet with their tamers, so they can't really get too much stronger, but they're in trouble, and each of the tamers have to end up focusing on why they need to protect someone. Takato wants to protect his parents and the city, Rika wants to protect her grandma and her mom, and Henry wants to protect his sister and his family, and that's what changes their cards into blue cards, and they're able to use that to help power up their Digimon. And then there's of course the red cards. The red card, there's one singular red card that is designed by Shibumi that allows him to adjust it to that way the Digimon and the Tamers can then biomerge and then fight inside of the D-Reaper at the end of the series. That's used there. Going into the actual cards at this point in time. We're going to start with Takato. And some of these, as I said, they end up getting used multiple times throughout the course of the series. Takato finds a good combination of this card and Gilmon, or Henry will be oh, well, this one works really well for Terriermon or Renamon. Rika's oh, this one's a really good one for Renamon, or different things like that. So we get to see them use some of the same cards over and over again. And there's also cards like the Power card and the Speed card and things like that they've all used at various points in time for their Digimon. So I don't think I'll be going over exact every single one of those ones for so every single time, just the different cards they've used. One of the ones that Takato actually does very good with Gilmon after he gets a little bit more practice with it is Hyper Wing, which I actually like the art of. It gives Gilmon the ability to fly by making wings pop out of his back, and he's able to fly with them. And then there's Power card, which just increases Gilmon's power. There's the Speed card, increases speed, makes perfect sense. Digivolution, just allows, Gilmon to be able to digivolve into Growlmon, and such. Then there's Hypersonic, which just increases the Digimon's, Gilmon or Growlmon's speed with Hyper Cell. It just helps with making him faster and everything like that. Metal Garurumon Blaster, which if I'm remembering correctly, actually kind of changes Gilmon's hand, one of his claws, into the blasters that Metal Garurumon has, and then he's able to fire that. And so that sometimes the cards do involve actually modifying the Digimon's appearance for a short amount of time. When he gains the cannon, or there's other ones that will do this too that I'll mention. Then there's the Matrix Digivolution card, which is the blue card, which allowed him to turn into War Growlmon, as I mentioned. There's Digmon's Drill, which on Gilmon meant that both of his hands or his claws ended up turning into drills, and then he was able to drill into the ground. So that way they could get into the subway and help Rika and Henry deal with the Snake Deva. So there's that. Then there's, he uses the Digivolution card multiple times throughout the course of the series. Power card, there's various versions of the Power card. It's Power 1, Power 2, Plug-in 3, whatever they're called. Different strength cards. Energy cards just boost their energy. Then there's, of course, just the red card in general that he uses, the blue card in general that they use. And then in the first Digimon movie, at one point in time, he has to use a card that's called Arrow Wing, which gives Gilmon Arrow Vidramon's wing, so they pop out of his back and he's able to fly. So kind of a different version of the Hyper Wings. Moving into Henry. speed card, power card, targeting card, which actually just helps increase Terriermon's accuracy, so he's able to aim much better, which makes sense for certain parts of Terriermon's attacks, and also would probably work really well for Gargomon and Rapidmon, and then Mega Gargomon, although when they're in their bio-merged forms, where they're, merged with their tamer and stuff, they don't actually use the cards because the tamer, like the Digivice kind of merged with the tamer, and then the tamer merged with the Digimon. So that's not really applicable. You can't really swipe a card at that point in time. So there's that. Targeting, as I said, stamina just helps make Terriermon be able to last a little bit longer in the fight, depending on what's going on. Training grips. So one of the cards that Henry ends up getting at one point in time are these different training grips, and he actually has Terriermon use them at one point in time to, they appear on Terriermon's ears, and then Terriermon like launches them at the Digimon that he's fighting, and they're designed to be like training weights. So they grab onto the Digimon and make it heavier so that way the Digimon can't move as easily. And then Henry and Takato are able to defeat the Digimon. So there's that, different types of, being able to use your cards really smartly in clever ways and stuff like that. Takato even uses different combinations of stuff that he uses with Guilmon and Growlmon. He ends up using when he's doing the card game battles with Kazu and Kenta. And doing it that way, so that way he's able to I know how to use this move already, so that's what I'll do. I use this on, Guilmon, and it worked really well, so why don't I try it here? And, it works really well. And Kazu and Kenta Kazu is actually quite good at the card game. So there's that. Although, irony, he's fairly decent at the card game, but we never actually see him use any modify cards throughout the course of the series. Once he gets Gargomon, or once he gets Gardramon. Back to this basic speed card, and then there's Heat, which is just called Heat, but Henry uses it on Terriermon to allow Terriermon to be able to activate Maramon's burning fist technique. So I think it heats up, it either hits up Terriermon's hands or the ends of his ears, because he fights with those a lot, so he's able to heat them up, and then he's able to punch his opponent really really well. Then there's Expansion, which sounds cool, and it makes Terriermon expand, so I guess it kind of makes him act like a balloon. I don't remember that card, but okay. I don't remember that happening in the series, but apparently it did. And then there's Hypersonic, again, just, increases speed. There's Digivolution, again, uses it to Digivolve into Gargomon. There's Wargreymmon's Brave Shield, which resulted in Terriermon or Gargomon being able to manifest the shield that Wargreymon uses, and able to use that as a defensive shield for a certain amount of time, which was kind of cool to watch. There's Thor's Hammer, which is summons up Zudomon's hammer that he has, because it's Thor's hammer, and he's able to, Terriermon, allows Terriermon to summon that and be able to swing that around for a short amount of time. I like references to the original series that they throw in there, because as I've pointed out multiple times, and I will do it again, is the kids that are in the Tamers world are they grew up watching the Adventure series, watching the adventures that Ty and Davis and their respective groups had. And so it's they know about the digital world and Digimon because of that, because it's they watched the show, and then in their world, their alternate dimension of things, they end up being able to have Digimon themselves. So there's of course the card game is a way of promoting the show, and it's an in-universe joke about that, but it's very blatant, but it works for the way it's showing a different way of being able to have the Digimon interact with their tamers and stuff like that. Hyper speed, again, grants speed. Rock armor increases the defense of the Digimon for Gargomon. Program pause. He uses this to try to Henry uses this card at one point to try to attempt to reverse the effects of a previous card. So it's just like, oh, Terriermon can't really move anymore because I made him too defensive and too bulky, so I need to reverse that. So he uses that. I don't remember if it works. Again, Digivolution, the Matrix Digivolution blue card as well. Energy, again, uses it a lot. Recharge, so Gargamon, of course, his hands are guns, guns, and they need to recharge their bullets whenever they run out. So recharge makes perfect sense. Reloads the bullets. Power again. Then there's Radiant Fate, which this card is actually really cute. I really like this card and the fact that they have Henry use it with Rapidmon because, of course, anyone that has seen the American version of the Digimon movie that they had that was like the three stitched together and like the last bit where we see Willis with Terriermon and Cocomon and everything. And at the end of that, when Davis and Willis end up, golden armor digivolving, where, Vmon turns into Magnamon, and then Terriermon turns into the golden version of Rapidmon, the egg, the armor digi-egg, is actually on the Radiant Fate card in this, which I really like as that touch, and that it's given to Rapidmon that is like the green version of Rapidmon as opposed to the golden armored Digivolve version of him, because that's like a nice little, call back to the original series. I'm quite certain that like whoever designed that card, and I'm pretty sure most of these cards are like actual cards that you can use from the actual like Digimon card game, which would make sense in my opinion. It's just like, it's like with Yu-Gi-Oh! It's like most of the cards that you see that appear in the series at some point in time have been turned into cards, or were cards that they then put into the show to promote said card, or some variation combination of the two. Digimon doing the same thing and throwing out references in that regard and references back to the original two series and stuff like that. I really liked how they did that. Again, Terriermon also uses Digmon's drill at one point in time, although for him it pops out of his head as opposed to like his ears, I guess, turning into it. And they actually kind of do a combo move with this because this one and the next one, they use the Digmon's drill, and Terriermon's trying to like drill Takato and himself and Henry out of like this cave that's underwater, and they start drilling it, and it actually causes water to flow into the cave. So it was like, oh, well, that's not going to work. So then Henry uses this next card that's Frigimon's Sub-Zero Ice Punch, and it allows Terriermon to then use one of his ears to freeze the water so it doesn't keep coming into the cave. So I like how they did that. It's just like, oh, well, that drill did not work. Here, freeze it. Okay, we're good. So there's that joke there. Also, it's a reference back to the first series with Frigimon there that was their friend. And then there is the Alias card, which I actually really kind of like how they set this card up in the series. And it's a small thing, but if you when during the battle that they are having with Beelzemon at first, after he's kind of killed Leomon, fun way of putting it, he's killed Leomon at that point in time. And he's fighting against Talmon and Rapidmon, and Rika and Henry are like, well, he's gonna absorb their data from them. We have to stop them. If he kills, if he destroys them, then we don't have our partners anymore. And what Henry and Rika both do is they use the Alias card, which it creates a clone of their Digimon, so that way it takes the attack, but at the cost of the energy. So it's like the way that we end up seeing this happen is that they use the Alias card, and it makes a temporary clone of both Talmon and Rapidmon, and Beelzemon's attack actually absorbs them, so he still gains their power, but it kind of forces them back out into their rookie form. So we see Terriermon pop out of where Rapidmon was, and we see Renamon pop out of where Talmon was. So it saves their Digimon costs of energy, but that's okay. It's I'd rather have the Digimon be okay than gone in that regard. So we see them do that in the series. I like how they used that section of it, or that setup of the card. Henry, of course, has also used the red card. Moving into Rika, we see her use various types of ways to increase Renamon's speed throughout the beginning of the series. Speed card, Hyper Chip, again, increases power by 10% or something like that. armor just involves this, piece of armor appearing on Renamon's arm, and then she's able to like bash her opponent with it, which I'm like, cool, that works. Again, the alias card, I don't remember specifically. Maybe Rika used it earlier on in the series, and then they used it again against Beelzemon, but I only remember it being used once. And then there's Agumon's Frozen Wind. So this just allows Renamon to be able to release one of, Agumon's like breath, ice, snow Agumon's attacks that allows them to freeze whatever it is they're fighting against. Hyper Chip again. Sneemon's Twin Sickle. So this is where Rika uses this on Renamon, and it results in Renamon being able to grow the sickles that Sneemon has out of her arms, or where her hands would be. They turn into that, and then she's able to use that to like slice her opponent, or like send off a couple of sickle wave attacks at her opponent, which is, again, it's a modifying thing that you're supposed to do with your Digimon to enhance their ability. Digivolution, again, as I mentioned in the how Digivolution works in Tamers. Rika and Renamon had like a much harder time trying to figure out how digivolving worked for them. So there's that. Hyper Speed again. Crystal Fire, it just increases Renamon's strength. Didn't really do too much there. They could have come up with better artwork, but again, they probably changed it from whatever the original name was. It was probably a little bit less of an interesting name. Power card again. Matrix Digivolution card again. Hyper Speed again, Radiant Fate again. Not as much of a callback as what happens with Terriermon, but still nice. It basically like engulfs their, it puts a protective, empowering light around their Digimon. And then the red card, and then at one point in time, they also Renamon also ends up having it's a card called Tomahawk. It's just what it's called. It gives Renamon Boltmon's Battle Tomahawk that she then throws. I do not remember when this is used. I vaguely remember seeing Renamon use an attack like that, but I don't remember exactly where. I don't know if this is in the Digimon Tamers Runaway Locomon movie, or if this is in the Digimon Tamers Island Adventure one, or whatever that one was called. It was this first one that they had. I don't remember which one it is, honestly, off the top of my head. But it's used in one of them, and it just gives Renamon a Tomahawk axe for a short amount of time, which I'm like, okay, this is cool. And then there's Shellmon's Hydro Blaster, which Renamon uses. This one I know is specifically used in Digimon Runaway Locomon because they're trying to like cool down the steam engine in Locomon. And Renamon, releases, Rika swipes the card, and they try using Shellmon's Hydro Blast to, cool down the engine, and it doesn't really work. It just steams up the place. And then we move into Rio. Much shorter of a thing here. We mainly see him, so we see him use Goliath, which he uses to increase Cyberdramon's size and strength. He uses this when they're fighting against the Dragon Deva. Again, I don't remember the Deva's name. I'm sorry. All of them, some of them sound very similar, and some of them just don't. The names just doesn't get said very much, so I don't remember what they're called. But I'll be doing the Deva videos soon, probably. But what ends up happening is it, increases Cyberdemon's strength and size. And Rio even says, because I think Kazu mentions, hey, that card's great. Can I borrow it? And Rio kind of points out, I was like, well, you kind of have to be a very skilled tamer in order to use some of these cards with your Digimon, simply because of it can, Cyberdemon is already a very hard Digimon to control. We saw that throughout the course of the series when Rio was there. That Cyberdemon is much harder to control than the others, just because he's much more on the rabid side of things. Not bad, just not as easily for him to control his temper and stuff. So Rio has to be very careful with like what type of cards he uses on Cyberdemon. Another one that he used is Avenging Knight, which gives Cyberdemon these two lances, and Rio actually uses these in a really interesting way. During the episode where him and Rika and Renamon and Cyberdramon actually are like having to deal with the D Reaper. It's the episode where Rika and Renamon biomerge for the first time. Rika has kind of gone down into the cavern space to try to save Calamon and from the D Reaper, and they see the D Reaper bubbling up. And Rio, in an attempt to try to like stall it out a little bit to give them a little more time so they can escape, he has Cyberdramon use the lances, summons them, and then like throws them onto the ground, throws them to like pin them like crosshatch wise, perpendicular to each other, and then like causes like a small cave in to like cover up that area. So it's like it's more stuff that the D Reaper has to eat through before it can get to them. And such. So it's like they do that kind of like Rio does a very smart move in that regard. Again, using the cards in clever ways. So that way they're able to, again, it's a very, it's a clever way of using it. It's like with Pokemon, it's, I can use a Pokemon this way, but sometimes it's smarter to use it this way when I'm trying to battle, and stuff like that. And yeah, I know battling in the anime doesn't follow the same exact logic as battling in the actual card game or in the actual handheld games. I'm well aware of this. And then, of course, Rio also uses the red card, of course, when they're having to deal with the D Reaper. Two more. So now we have Jerry. So, Jerry is actually one of the few that actually kind of ends up kind of getting two swipe sequences a little bit, because Jerry uses one where she's actually using Takato's Digivice because she's trying to get it to connect to Leomon, because she knows that Leomon is supposed to be her Digimon, but the bond hasn't been formed yet, so Leomon and her aren't actually connected yet. And so she tries using Takato's Digivice to, connect to Leomon, and it does not work. And then once she gets her own Digivice, she is able to use it. Unfortunately, we only end up getting to see her use like one card with him, and that's when they're dealing with Orochimon. And it is the Lady Devimon card, and she swipes the card, and it gives Leomon Lady Devimon's Darkness Wave, which allows him, which is like a poison technique, I guess, and it like affects Orochimon, so they're able to then like poison him and then defeat him. I mean, there is a little bit of an irony in that can call back to the original series, considering that like, stuff, things that happen with Leomon and everything like that, in the original series, and having, he gets manipulated by Devimon in the original series. So there's that. And then lastly, we have Susie, Henry's sister. So as I mentioned before, we don't ever see Kazu or Kenta, as far as I'm aware, use any of the cards or anything like that. I mean, like, we see them when they're like battling with each other with the card game itself, but we never actually see them use it with their actual Digimon, with either, Marine Angemon or with Gardramon. So there's not really anything there. And then Ai and Mako never use them. Same thing with, we never see, that's about it. There's not really any of the other ones that like end up having any form of like, that use cards with their Digimon. So the last one is Susie. And the card that she uses is actually Radiant Form, and it's actually given to her by Rio, because like he sees that Susie is, a tamer as well as when they're back in the real world, and he sees her with Antilamon, and with Antilamon / Lopmon, and he's like, oh well, you're a tamer too, aren't you, Susie? And she's like, yeah. And he's like, well, then I think you need to have a card too. And he gives her the card, and it's called, they just call it Radiant Form. And later on, when I don't think it's when the exact final battle is happening, or if it's like one of the final battles is happening against the D Reaper, but Lopmon is just like, well, I'm a Digimon too, and I need to go and I need to fight as well. And like she kind of like, short inspirational speech to Susie, and then Susie gets like her little card swipe sequence, and she swipes Radiant Form, which is just adorable for Susie, like having this card swiping sequence. She swipes Radiant Form, and and Lopmon digivolves into Antilamon, and then that just increases Antilamon's strength and like puts this like pretty cute little pink aura around her. And she, flies off, and she heads off to go and fight against the D Reaper at that point in time. Again, I don't remember exactly I don't think that's during the final battle against the D Reaper. It's just during one of the previous battles against it. So it's just like, that card that, Ryu gave her paid off. That I like how they show that. One thing that I did want to mention about Jerry is um, throughout the course of the series, once Jerry kind of finds out that the Digimon are real and Takato has one and it's Gilmon and all this other stuff, that what ends up happening is she actually ends up buying a bunch of different Digimon cards. She buys the cards that they use in the game because she knows that Takato and Rika and Henry and the others, use these cards with their Digimon, and then they also use them in the card game because she kind of thought the card game was kind of silly at the beginning of the series, and then she just kind of wants to learn how to use the cards. And Rika actually kind of takes her aside and starts trying to like show her how to use the cards. Kazu and Kenta kept trying to get Jerry to like trade cards with them because she had like a bunch of really good ones. So like it sets up the fact that Jerry has these cards, and then later on when she uses the Lady Devimon card with Leomon as like a payoff for that. So like she's been kind of like watching how the others use their cards, and then also just like probably having like Rika give her some more pointers and how to battling tips and things like that. So I like how they kind of pay that off. So that was basically what I wanted to go through for the cards. I still have videos planned where I'll be going over the different Digimon that are like that get bio-merged into the real world. That one might be the next one. And then I'll be doing one or a couple about the different Devas, just because there's 12 of them, and some of them are quite involved and about to how much time we spend with them. And then, of course, I still have to do the video itself about the D Reaper, but I haven't gotten to that one yet. So that's what I have for this. I thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye!